The break room of the aggravating police department was a sickly yellow box under fluorescent lights. Officer Paletti sat at a chipped formica table, his heavy frame slumped over a mug of burned coffee. It was nearly 2 in the morning. The biggest crime in aggravating this week was a missing garden gnome. Paletti blew on the crew, battling the tedium of the night shift. The quiet hum of the building was marred by the steady, hypnotic roar of the Pacific surf outside the thin walls, a constant thunder against the cliffs the station was perched upon. Someone of a different temperament than Paletti might have considered that surf an ever-present reminder that even in this sleepy, forgotten corner of California, something vast and wild was moving just beyond the reach of the light. The door cracked. Ed, Officer Wood, technically, though he seldom used the title, stepped in. He moved past the threshold and closed the door, leaning his back against it as if the night itself was trying to follow him. Ed's face, usually calm and composed, was ashen. His eyes were wide and ringed with dark shadow. His uniform looked rumpled. Paletti slowly set his mug down. "You all right?" he asked, his voice low. Ed cleared his throat, pushing off the door. He turned his head dazedly, his eyes focused on the coffee maker, but he didn't reach for it. "I was on patrol," Ed began, "out past the overpass on 101. He paused, rubbing the back of his neck. Saw a car stop on the shoulder, lights off. Thought someone broke down. I pulled over to check." Paletti took a slow sip of coffee. "Flat tire?" Ed shook his head. "No, it was a woman, mid-30s maybe, just sitting there. I asked her what the trouble was, and she looked at me like I was lost. Said she lived just over the hill. She wasn't broken down. She was waiting. Said she'd seen something in the sky over the old Pacheco field. Strange lights. Parked there to see if they came back." Paletti scoffed. "UFO nut, huh? Where you get those? I'll bet it was some Air Force boys out of Vandenberg running drills. They fly right over the field on their approach vector sometimes." "That's what I told her," Ed said. "I also told her it wasn't safe to be parked by the on-ramp, especially at 1 in the morning. I was in the middle of explaining how the afterburners of an F4 Phantom 2 can look pretty odd, and then..." Ed trailed off, his jaw tightening. Paletti waited for a beat or two, then prodded the shaken man to continue. "Then what?" Ed finally looked away from the coffee maker, fixing his gaze on Paletti. "Then the lights came back, over the Pacheco field. Not a plane, not a flare. It was a cluster of dots, a half-dozen separate points of cold, searing white, held in a perfect, rigid formation. No sound, no movement, hanging in maybe 500 feet over the dirt." Paletti stared, his coffee mug frozen halfway to the table. Ed continued. "The lights didn't flicker. They didn't drift on the wind. They just pulsed, slowly, in perfect synchronization. Like a heart, you know. This is what it seemed like." I stood there, looking up, and for the first time in 10 years in the forest, I didn't have a damn thing to say. Ed lowered his gaze and thought back on his memory of the woman's voice, frantic and high-pitched. "It's back. Oh my God, officer. It's the thing I saw before. It's back." He cleared his throat, then continued speaking. "We heard something then. A deep tearing sound. Military jets. As soon as the first jet roar hit us, that thing, that UFO, it just vanished. From a total standstill, Pleiades. It shot away, not climbing, horizontal, gone in the space of a blink. Gone." Ed nodded, like a stone shot from a sling. It left a faint, green afterglow in my eyes for a second. and then nothing but the night sky, and the two jets screaming past a second later. They were fast Pleiades, but they weren't even close. The thing was already miles ahead of them. He finally picked up a mug, his hand shaking slightly. The woman and I, we got into our cars without looking back. We didn't exchange another word, we just drove away. The silence that followed was punctuated only by the muted, tireless sound of the Pacific. Blighty set his mug down with a soft clink that sounded like a gunshot in the oppressive quiet. Ed stared into his coffee, his own face a portrait of exhaustion and something else, more inscrutable. The brick room door opened for a second time. Two people stood in the doorway. They were not locals, not reporters, and certainly not Air Force brass. They were a man and a woman, dressed in matching, impeccably tailored dark suits that seemed to absorb the sickly yellow light. Pilates' years of experience kicked in. These people were important, and they were here for something that was not on the police blotter. They radiated an aura of gravitas and professionalism, like it was woven into their DNA. The man was tall and lean, his expression utterly blank, a silent, imposing shadow who stood just inside the doorway, observing. He didn't move or speak, his hands clasped loosely in front of him. The woman took a crisp step into the room. She was shorter, but no less formidable. Her skin was pale, and her blue eyes, though calm, seemed to miss nothing. Her red hair was styled in a severe, perfect bob that looked as if it would feel like lagered oak. She addressed them without preamble, her voice low and even, with a hardness and authority that required no shouting. Officer Wood, Officer Pilates. Pilates straightened in his chair. Can I help you? The woman offered a brief smile. I believe the help will run the other way, officer. I'm Agent Wells, and this is Agent Morrow. She glanced back at her silent partner, who gave no visible acknowledgement. Her eyes came back to rest on Ed, her gaze sharp and penetrating. Officer Wood, she continued, we need to talk to you about what you saw. She paused, then shifted her pale blue gaze to Pilates. In private, if you don't mind. Pilates understood the implied order immediately. It wasn't a request. The temperature in the room had dropped. He felt something like a primal urge to protect Ed, but a deeper instinct told him that any attempt to stay in the room would be foolish, perhaps even dangerous. He pushed his chair back, the scrape of the metal legs across the linoleum seeming deafening. Right, he mumbled, picking up his empty mug. Good luck, Ed. He walked past the woman, his elbow brushing against Agent Morrow's motionless sleeve. The man was as cold and unyielding as granite. Pilates didn't look at either of them, but as they reached the door, he couldn't help but glance back. Ed was still seated, his posture ramrod straight, his eyes locked on Agent Wells. Despite the badge on his chest and the gun on his hip, he looked small. Pilates pulled the door shut behind him. The click of the latch and the soft thud of the door against the frame struck him as ominous and final. Hi everyone, welcome to Virtual Muse, the MST3K of RPGs, where I sit alone in space playing games with a robot. Today, we're continuing our story based on Plan 9 from Outer Space, using Sharp Mountain Solo from Sharp Mountain Games. Abby and I have been doing a lot of development of the larger plot, and I was thinking that made the previous episode a little too slow going. We went back and forth about the story so much it took time away from action. I thought we could start putting this story development into opening cinematics instead, so we can focus on active stuff during the actual game session. The last episode ended with Ruby and Zephyr waiting until injured Max had fallen asleep in the guest room of Professor thought is his place, then sneaking away into the night to investigate an abandoned warehouse which Ruby remembered Vampire had mentioned once. We'll pick up right there.
The air is heavy with moisture, and the trees surrounding the warehouse seem to loom over it. The moon is peeking through the clouds, casting a silvery glow that breaks through the fog. It creates haunting shadows around the warehouse.
I think Ruby and Zephyr attempt to move quickly but silently, staying aware of their surroundings as they go. She succeeds, and because currently there are only 2 members of the party, that means their success equals success for half the party. In Charmant solo, that's all you need. So she and Zephyr both manage to approach silently.
The sound of their footsteps is muffled by the fog, but they're still careful to tread lightly. The interior of the warehouse is dimly lit, with only a few faint rays of moonlight filtering through grimy windows. The space is vast and largely empty, except for a few scattered crates and boxes. A rickety staircase leads up to a loft area, and the walls are adorned with old pipes and rusty machinery. There are hints of recent occupation, like footprints in the dust and faint scuff marks on the floorboards. Some crates appear to have been recently moved, and a nearby box has its lid slightly ajar, suggesting someone may have rummaged through it recently.
Ruby approaches that box and examines the contents, and carefully pushes the lid aside. She turns her face away as chalky dust drifts up, then turns back after a moment and shines her flashlight in.
Inside the box, Ruby sees a collection of strange and exotic trinkets, including a crystal pendant, some tarot cards, and a taxidermied owl with its eyes replaced by shiny silver coins. It looks like someone has been collecting oddities and relics, possibly Vampira herself.
Ruby definitely takes the crystal pendant. I've played enough games to know that item will become important later. Anyway, this proves that Vampira spent a lot of time here, and made this a sanctuary where she collected her odd treasures. Maybe she even lived here. Is there an indication of that? Ruby looks around for things like a makeshift bedroll, a plug-in hot plate, or anything else that suggests habitation. Maybe there's a living space up in the loft area.
As Ruby searches, she sees that the loft area seems to be set up with a makeshift bed, consisting of old blankets and pallets, arranged to create a cozy sleeping space. There's also a small portable stove tucked away in a corner, with a few cooking utensils scattered nearby, suggesting that Vampira may have indeed lived here full-time.
I think Ruby now goes back down the stairs to the first floor and turns her attention to the door, which was ajar, and carefully swings it open with the barrel of her laser rifle.
Beyond the doorway, Ruby's flashlight beam reveals a narrow corridor stretching off into darkness, with cobweb-shrouded pictures hanging crookedly on the walls. The air emanating from the corridor is stale and musty, with a hint of decay.
Are the pictures corporate-type things which might relate to the company which built this warehouse in the first place, and are vestiges of that time? Or do they seem like Vampira might have added them to the space personally?
The pictures seem to be a mix of old corporate photos and some more unusual images, like Victorian-era photographs and what appears to be a vintage circus advertisement. They give off a sense of eclecticism, suggesting that Vampira may have curated this assortment herself, blending the warehouse's original decor with her own eccentric tastes.
Ruby shines her flashlight on various pictures and portraits, trying to tell if any of them means anything. Perhaps there's a clue here, or a message from Vampira.
Ruby's beam settles on a faded photograph of a woman in a long, flowing dress standing in front of an ornate mirror. The woman's face seems familiar, and Ruby wonders if it might be Vampira herself, or perhaps someone important to her. The mirror behind the woman appears to be reflecting an image that doesn't quite match the surroundings. Ruby notices words scrawled artfully on the picture, written backwards in the mirror. She squints and puzzles through the backwards text, reading aloud. It says, "All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream." Ruby recognizes where that quote comes from because she's a big fan of Poe. She shares with Zephyr that the line reflects themes of perception and reality.
I think Ruby makes a connection between this reference and the previous reference to Huxley in Vampira's performance, and she mentions offhandedly how well read Vampira is.
Ruby's observation makes Zephyr raise an eyebrow, impressed by Vampira's intellectual range. Zephyr notes that Vampira seems to be drawing parallels between different literary traditions, which might reflect her own ambiguous nature.
Are there any other messages or clues scattered through the odd images in the corridor?
There's a collage on one wall, made from newspaper clippings and old photographs, including a news headline about a UFO sighting. It looks like Vampira might have been interested in extraterrestrial activity.
I'm sure seeing this excites Zephyr. It also fits into Ruby's growing certainty that Vampira is at the center of whatever is happening with the aliens. Do the headlines refer to a specific incident, like UFOs being spotted over Hollywood, or are they general?
The headlines appear to be general, mentioning alleged sightings in several cities, including Los Angeles. One article catches Ruby's eye. It's an old clipping from a local paper, reporting a strange occurrence near Red Rock Canyon. The article mentions a reported UFO crash in that area, but it seems the authorities were unable to confirm or deny the incident due to lack of evidence. There are quotes from witnesses describing strange lights and sounds in the area around the time of the alleged crash. The article also mentions rumors of military involvement in investigating the site.
Maybe this shows Vampira was trying to stay aware of the aliens' visits. Ruby thinks this is more evidence that Vampira was on the run, working to stay one step ahead of the aliens as they search for her. While time goes by, do Ruby and Zephyr hear anyone else moving anywhere in the warehouse? I imagine Ruby is nervously listening, worried that if the aliens are trying to find Vampira, they might find their way here as well, sooner or later.
Ruby holds her breath and listens for any movement elsewhere in the warehouse. For a moment, there's silence, but then she picks up the faint creak of wooden beams and the soft rustle of unknown origin.
Is the sound back the way they came?
No, it seems to be coming from deeper within the warehouse, possibly from another level or room beyond the corridor they're currently exploring. Ruby exchanges a cautious glance with Zephyr, sensing they might not be alone anymore.
Ooh, interesting. Maybe the aliens found the warehouse and got here before they did.
Ruby leans in closer to Zephyr, her voice barely above a whisper, suggesting they scout out the source of the sound.
I imagine Ruby and Zephyr shut off their flashlights so they won't be beacons in the dark, then proceed slowly and carefully, navigating by weak moonlight.
They creep forward, ears straining. The creaking and rustling grow slightly louder, seeming to emanate from around a corner up ahead. The sound is coming from a door at the far end of the corridor, which looks like it might lead to a smaller, enclosed room or office. The door is slightly open, allowing the faint noises to filter into the hallway. It sounds like someone is rummaging through drawers or shelves, maybe searching for something specific. The movements seem deliberate, but also somewhat hurried.
It must be that the aliens beat Ruby and Zephyr here. That explains why they've been seeing doors and crates left ajar. But it seems like Vampira got away beforehand, or perhaps hadn't even come back here at all, because it sounds like the aliens are frustrated and searching for clues about where she might be.
That's a good point, Silas. It's possible Vampira anticipated the aliens would track her down and left before they arrived. The fact that the aliens seem frustrated suggests they might not have found what they're looking for yet. Maybe Ruby and Zephyr can catch a glimpse of what's going on inside the room if they move quietly enough.
Good call. Are there any windows into the office, or will they have to try to catch a glimpse through the door itself?
There's a small window on the wall adjacent to the door. It might provide a narrow view of the room's interior, but Ruby and Zephyr would need to position themselves carefully to avoid detection.
Failure. Ruby and Zephyr creep towards the window, but getting there requires them to move past the ajar door, and as they step across the narrow opening, Ruby's foot comes down in an old empty can, which crumples loudly. The occupants of the room whirl towards the sudden noise and look straight at Ruby and Zephyr.
The beings staring at Ruby and Zephyr aren't human. Their features distorted and unsettling under the dim lighting. One of them takes a step forward, its movements economical and menacing, while the other remains frozen, its gaze fixed intently on the pair.
Ruby sees that one of the beings is an alien in a silver uniform, like she encountered already, but the other being is hunched and ghoulish, and the first being has it on a robust leash. The alien draws a pistol-like laser weapon of some kind, but aims it at the ghoul and steps away from it. Then it drops the leash and allows the ghoul to spring towards Ruby and Zephyr.
The ghoul's twisted face contorts into a grotesque snarl as it charges towards Ruby and Zephyr, its movements jerky and unnatural. Ruby instinctively grabs Zephyr's arm, pulling them back as the ghoul crashes into the doorframe.
In Charmant Solo, we start a combat encounter by rolling initiative on a 6-sided die. 1 to 3, we go first. 4 to 6, the opponents go first. On their turn, characters can move 30 feet and either attack or take one action. I think I got that wrong in a previous episode and thought characters can attack and take one action on their turn, but I'll try to remember the correct rule now. Creating NPCs is easy. They have 8 on all skills by default, and we adjust that however makes sense. We also choose how tough they are by deciding if they're low, mid, or high level opponents, and then they have default HP from there. Let's say these are mid-level opponents, so they start with 4 HP each, and their skill scores are 8 on everything. First we'll roll for initiative. Our side goes first, so Ruby will immediately take a point-blank shot with her laser rifle at the ghoul. She hits. The ghoul staggers and drops to 3 HP. Zephyr aims for it with a strike from a rusty pipe they found somewhere in the warehouse. Hit. The ghoul drops to 2 HP. Now the alien and the ghoul have a chance to counterattack or take any other kind of action. The ghoul is mindless, so I think it will only attack. The alien is probably keeping its distance because I imagine the ghoul is taking wide, random swings. 1 and 5. The ghoul misses. It's taking huge swipes with its claws, but Ruby and Zephyr are dodging away quickly enough to keep anything from landing. Now we're back to Ruby and Zephyr, who will both attack again. I'll roll 3d6 for Ruby first, because I just remembered she has one free roll with advantage left for today, and this is a great time to use it. 1, 4, and 2. Even with advantage, she misses. She takes a shot, but the ghoul swipes and barrels aside just as she pulls the trigger, and the lizard goes wide. Now Zephyr will attack with advantage, trying to salvage this turn. 3, 5, and 5. Hit. Zephyr strikes the ghoul with the pipe, and it jerks away. It's down to 1 HP, so imagine it's visibly staggering. And the alien rushes forward to join the fight in the next turn, because it can see things are going badly for its side. What do you imagine the alien does?
I think it'll try to save the ghoul. Its priority might be to keep its own ally alive. Maybe the alien has some sort of healing technology or ability that can restore the ghoul's health. It could use some kind of energy beam to close the ghoul's wounds, restoring its HP. Or maybe it releases a gas that accelerates the healing process.
Imagine it uses a healing beam of some kind, because the gas would reach Ruby and Zephyr as well, and buff them, which the alien wouldn't want. Usually healing in Sharp Mountain solo is done outside of combat, but if this is a focused laser the alien is shooting at the ghoul, we'll treat it like an attack, and the alien will roll with its close combat skill. 1 and 3. The alien tries its electron ray gun on the ghoul to boost its strength, but it can't crit connection, and the attempt fizzles.
Now it's Ruby and Zephyr's turn again. Should they focus on taking out the ghoul or target the alien instead?
I think they should try to finish the ghoul first, and maybe they can get information from the alien if they're able to incapacitate it afterwards. Ruby is out of rolls with advantage for today, so she'll roll normally for this rifle shot. 6 and 6. Critical success. That would do 2 HP of damage, but in this case that isn't necessary because the ghoul only has 1 HP. Ruby hits it square in the chest and it collapses to the ground. The alien is now outnumbered and outgunned. Do you imagine it surrenders or does it continue to fight?
Maybe the alien tries to retreat and escape, rather than surrendering or continuing to fight head-on. It might try to create a diversion or use its technology.
Ooh, interesting. There's a window in the wall of this office, looking into the main warehouse floor beyond. And there's also a door in the back of the office. Does it leap through the window and sprint across the warehouse floor, or does it retreat through that door?
I think it takes the door route.
I imagine the alien throws down some kind of flashbang grenade device and makes a dash for the door. What a perfect cliffhanger to end the session on. We can close with Ruby and Zephyr turning away from the intense burst of light as the alien rushes for the door and escapes into the darkness beyond.
Sounds like a thrilling ending to me. Can't wait to pick up where we left off next session and see where the alien leads us. The suspense is killing me. If you want to catch the next episode, remember to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell.